I firmly believe that everyone has a worst flying story, and I'm about to tell you mine. I just came back from vacation the other week and I flew on American Airlines. And I'm about to tell you about the experience, and along the way we're going to use the opportunity to learn a little bit about the effects of stress on the body and the mind, because believe you me, it was stressful. So I had an international flight, and it was a connecting flight. So I was flying out of my first location, had a connection in the US, and then my final destination. So the first flight out was fine. Got to my connection, got through customs in like 15 minutes, pretty easy. The layover was fairly short, like an hour and a half. I know, kind of tight, but I figured everything goes right, I can make it. And my first flight was on time, so we were on track. We were making good time. And for those who don't know, when you're on an international flight, you have to, if you check the bag, which I did, you have to get the bag once you arrive, get the bag, and then recheck it, and then re-go through TSA. So I'm through customs, and I gotta recheck my bag. So I go out to the baggage claim, I'm waiting there with everyone, and we wait for 5, 10, 15 minutes, no bags are coming out. Everyone's wondering what the hell is going on. Are we like at the right carousel? And then finally, bags start to come out. And I swear to God, they dropped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags, and then they just let it sit. Honest to God, another like 5 minutes before they dropped another 5 bags. And mind you, this was a big flight. This was like a lot of people on this flight, so there was a lot of bags to get through. And they dropped 5 at a time. Like, I understand you don't want to overcrowd the carousel, but like, that's the beautiful thing about modern technology at a modern airport. You can do more than 5 bags on a carousel. You really can. And they were dropping 5 at a time. Go take a smoke break, drop another 5 if you feel like it, maybe. And so I was starting to really freak out, especially when cohort after cohort of 5 would come and my bags weren't among any of them. My bag was one of the last ones to come out. I swear to God, it was like 35, 40 minutes before my bag came out. And so I went from being kind of early when I got through customs to quite late. So at that point I'm panicking. I grab my bag, I run it over to be rechecked, and I think they know that I was late, because I think a lot of people on that specific flight got screwed. And so, I'm running it over to the guy, and he says, "Are you going to your final destination?" And I say, "Yes." And so he grabs the bag, and he doesn't put like any tags or anything on it. He just grabs the bag and like throws it in a pile. And he's like, "All right, you're good." I don't think I am. Like, "Are you sure that bag is going to the right place?" He's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. You're all good, dude. Don't worry, I got you. I did not think that he got me, but I was late, and so where I would normally do my due diligence, I just had to book it. So I'm running to TSA at this point. TSA line, not too bad. It was about 10 minutes, but I noticed something at this point. I noticed that I was in Terminal A, and my gate for my flight was in Terminal F. And I didn't know where that was because I wasn't familiar with this specific airport, but it sounded far. So I asked the lady when I get to the front of the line at TSA, I'm like, "So where's Terminal F?" She goes, Well, what do you mean, You work at this airport. You're here every day. Like, I refuse to believe that you don't know where Terminal F is. So that pissed me off, and then I'm getting through TSA, and I like damn near grab my stuff out of the machine. I basically like reach into it, and I'm panicking at this point because I made it through, but at this point, it's only like 15 minutes until my flight takes off. Not until boarding is, but until my flight like takes off. So I already think I'm screwed, but I gotta try anyway. So I start trying to find ways to get to Terminal F. And I see that there is a shuttle. And in my opinion, that's never a good sign. Because if there's a shuttle to a terminal, that means it's far. And I also see that walking-wise, it would be 15 to 20 minutes just to get to Terminal F. So I'm like, oh, hell no. I mean, I definitely can't do that, so I have to take the shuttle. So I go and I find the shuttle. There's a couple other people waiting there. They're also late for their flights, but they have different flights than me. And the shuttle is like nowhere in sight. And so I asked the guy who's manning the shuttle, I say, when's the next shuttle coming? And he says, oh, this is your job. Imagine if everyone had that attitude about their job. So anyway, since I can't trust that the shuttle is coming anytime soon. And so I wait there for like 3 minutes, still no sign of it, and I'm like, fuck it. I just decide to book it. I'm thinking if I run, maybe I can cut that 15 to 20 minutes down to like 5 minutes. And that is pretty much the only way that I would make it at this point. So I start booking it across the airport. I got my shoes in my hand still from TSA. I'm like dodging and weaving around people. I'm ducking underneath people's legs because I'm not very tall. I got my backpack on my back. I got my vacation gut on my front, so it's like a weighted run basically. And I make it to Terminal F in just a little over 5 minutes, but still, I was convinced that I was too late. And I get to Terminal F, and the first thing that I see is gate closed. And so I'm like, damn it, dude, I missed it. I missed my flight. And it turns out I was looking at the wrong gate. I was looking at the wrong gate, the one next to my flight. And I looked over and thank the good Lord, my flight was very slightly delayed and I was able to make it. I'm talking very slightly, like so slightly it didn't even show up on the boarding pass. And that's one of the things I kept checking the boarding pass to see, maybe my flight's delayed. Apparently not delayed enough to show up, but delayed enough that I was just able to make final boarding. So I get on the plane, I'm disgustingly sweaty, I feel so bad for the guy that has to sit next to me. And luckily the flight is very short. So it's only it's less than an hour flight. And then we land at the final destination and we landed early, so they didn't have a gate for us yet. Which is fine, that happens. You land early, they don't have a gate. It's not really the airline's fault or anything, you landed early. It's just, going by the schedule of the airline. But I like it when they at least make an announcement about that kind of thing. Other airlines, they've done that before. Hey, we landed a bit early, we're just gonna chill until we can find a gate. But instead, we land and we just start doing, it's not even like we're circling the gates in the way that they do when they're looking for a gate. We're just doing these tiny little circles, just basically sitting in place, but doing these tiny little circles, I guess so that it looks like we're doing something. So that we're just not sitting on that runway like a bunch of assholes just waiting for a gate. And then finally, after about 20 minutes, one opens up. I get off the plane. I think the nightmare is finally over. And I get to baggage claim, God bless their souls, they're loading more than 5 bags on at a time now, wouldn't you know it? And then they get to the end of the bags and mine's not there. The bags stop moving, the little light thing that signals that the bags are coming goes out, and I'm left without a bag. And I walked over to this guy who's standing around there. He's I guess monitoring the baggage claim. And I walked over to him and I said, my bag hasn't come out. And he looks at me, he's like, and he's like, fill that out. It's basically like a QR code. I go and I scan it. And here's what happens when you scan the QR code. You scan it and basically you fill out a form that says hey, this is the bag you lost. And then they're like, all right. Looks like we lost your bag. And then that's it. And I walk up to the guy and I'm like, so I filled out the form, but I still would like to know where my bag is. What happened to my bag? And he's like, you can go talk to that lady over there. She was at the baggage claim information desk. So I go and I talk to this lady, I walk up to her and I tell her the situation. And she gives me the same look. She gives me one of these. Her and the guy outside were having a competition to see who could give the least of a shit, and they were both winning. And she's like, what's your baggage claim number? I give her the number, and she looks it up and she's like, yeah, your bag is still at your connection. Okay. And now the question is, how do we get it from there to here? And she's like, yeah, it'll probably get here tomorrow morning. She's like, we can deliver it to your place if you want, which I thought was quite generous of them. They're like, we can deliver it to your place if you want, but yeah, it'll get here tomorrow morning or something. And I was like, okay, but why is my bag still at my connection? I immediately thought back to that other guy and who said that he got me when he rechecked my bag. I immediately thought back to him and knew in my heart that he didn't got me. And so I asked her that, and she's like, I don't know. She gives me the official motto of American Airlines. I don't know. And so I tell her, look, this has been a really crappy experience. Like, I've been getting this type of service from y'all all day, and now a lost bag. And the next thing that she says to me, like, still baffles me to this day. It's been like about a week or a little bit more since this all happened, and I still think about this to this day because I still have no idea why she would say this. She looks at me and she says, all right, so do you want me to cancel your bag delivery tomorrow morning? Is this lady okay? Like, I don't see any scenario in which she would have taken what I said to mean that I wanted my bag delivery canceled the next morning. What I would have liked is for my bag to arrive with me on the flight. See, that's why a lot of people check their bags, is so that they can travel with them, and then the bag arrives at your destination at the same time that you do. Clearly that didn't happen for me this time, so barring that, when I look at my options now, I would say that dragging my ass back to the airport tomorrow morning to finish a job that you should have done is pretty much at the bottom of my choices. And at that point, I just had to leave the airport because I was just gonna have an aneurysm right there at baggage claim, and I just had to go home and get out of that situation. But I knew on the way back that I had to make a video about this because it was just like so prominently in my head, and a week later it's still in my head, and I'm not the only one who had this kind of experience. The people that I was traveling with were traveling to different airports on different airlines, but they all had a bad time too. And so I knew that I wanted to make this video. While this was all happening at the airport, several things happened to me that day and that night that I wanted to talk about because my initial reaction to them was, these are great examples of what effects stress can have on your mind and your body. So I figured it would be a good opportunity to talk about them. And on the way, we're gonna look at a little bit of research that will either support or dissuade the idea that maybe this experience caused these symptoms for me. So the same day that all this happened at the airport, I got sick. I could feel myself getting sick at the airport as this was all happening, and then the next day it developed into a full-blown cold. And I haven't been sick in over a year. I've got a pretty good immune system. And lo and behold, the day that this happens, I get sick. Coincidence? Maybe, but I don't care. Because number one, I'm looking for excuses to hate American. And number two, I'm looking for excuses to talk about the effect of stress on the immune system. So one of the main ways that stress can affect your immune system is by generating the hormone cortisol. So cortisol is actually an anti-inflammatory hormone, and it's helpful in smaller, short-term doses. You have an acute stressor, your body generates cortisol to actually help inflammation go down in your body. But the problem is with chronic stress, your body is always working on overdrive to generate additional cortisol. Your body gets used to that amount of cortisol and inflammation increases in the body, your immune system weakens, your immunity goes down. Chronic stress can also decrease the number of lymphocytes that you have in the body, and this is a type of white blood cell that helps you fight off infections. So you have less of them and your immunity is weakened because you're more susceptible to viruses in a variety of different forms. There's also an important link between symptoms of anxiety and depression, stress, and your physical health. There's an article that I'll link below, but to summarize it, basically stress, especially chronic stress, in a number of ways leads to symptoms of anxiety and depression, a number of processes in the brain. And then those create further inflammation in the body, and they can lead to sickness, lower immunity. We talked about lymphocytes a minute ago, which are a type of white blood cell, but white blood cells more broadly are called leukocytes. When you're chronically stressed, these leukocytes release what's called cytokines or interleukins, and essentially these are proteins that send different signals to the body and the brain. The signal sent by these cytokines in the case of chronic stress is thought to lead to symptoms of anxiety and depression. Stress also activates microglia, which are these cells in the brain that are also signal senders. And specifically in the brain, they moderate things like your immune system and also inflammation. Not only can signals sent by microglia under chronic stress cause symptoms like depression, but it's also been shown that people who have depression have lowered activity in their microglia in general, and so you get those symptoms like elevated inflammation. Another really interesting thing that happened to me the night that I got back from the airport is I had the worst case of sleep paralysis that I've ever had. So I've been having sleep paralysis, not super regularly, but it's happened and it's been distinct for a number of years now. And one of the things that I find kind of like fascinatingly terrifying is how much worse the episodes have gotten over time. This time was the worst. It was full on, felt like something was like wrapped around me, holding me down to the bed. I had like these demonic voices like whispering in my ear. I felt something like grabbing me from behind. I felt like the walls were closing in. So literally like a living nightmare. My first thought when this happened to me was, I wonder if stress, and specifically I wonder if this stress that I experience today could be a factor. So a study done in 2018 conducted a review of 42 different previous articles that named different factors, different variables that were relevant in the case of people who had sleep paralysis. And there were a number of different forms of stress that were found to be relevant. People who self-report high levels of general stress and social anxiety were found to be more likely to experience sleep paralysis. There was also a link found between a higher prevalence of regular nightmares and sleep paralysis as well. The author of the article also mentioned that it could be that stress is causing sleep paralysis, or it could be that sleep paralysis is causing more general stress. So there's a correlation, but it's difficult in this case to determine causation. What I actually found really interesting is that there was an even stronger correlation between sleep paralysis and trauma. So it was found that patients who had a diagnosis of PTSD or who had experienced childhood abuse were much more likely to experience sleep paralysis both more frequently and more intensely when they did experience it. One study in the review found that 47% of patients with confirmed memories of childhood abuse said that they had experienced sleep paralysis. 44% of patients who didn't have confirmed memories but who suspected that they had gone through abuse said that they experienced sleep paralysis, and then only 13% of the control group who had not experienced any abuse endorsed any type of sleep paralysis experience. So we looked at the research. It looks like the issues with stress in the immune system come mostly from chronic stress. It looks like the issues with sleep paralysis and stress, the data is a little bit tenuous at best. So probably not the case that one very stressful experience caused those two things to happen to me. I can admit when I'm wrong. I can. That's why we have the research. That's why we look at the research. But I still find it interesting that those two things that very rarely happen to me happened on the same day that my trip from hell, my flight from hell happened. Even if there's not a really clear link, I'm glad that we got the opportunity to look a little bit at stress, the immune system, and sleep paralysis to kind of learn how those things work a little bit more. And honestly, I'm not thoroughly convinced that American wasn't somehow still involved. At this point, I'll take any opportunity I can to blame American Airlines for all the problems in my life. So American Airlines, you've made an enemy for life. If you would have asked me a few days ago, I would have told you that I would have rather traveled on the wing of a Spirit Airlines flight and jumped off with a faulty parachute to reach my next destination than to ever travel with you again. Unfortunately, I have another trip coming up. And guess what was the only flight available? So you've got a shot at redemption, American. My faith could not be lower.